Hello, my name is Louis Bonvanni, and today I'll be presenting my research on labor unions. In this presentation, we will go over what a labor union is, the purpose of a union leadership, membership, economic impacts, as well as strengths and challenges of modern-day labor unions. Merriam-Webster defines a labor union as an organization of workers formed for the purpose of advancing its members' interests in respect to wages, benefits, and working conditions. The purpose and function of a labor union encompasses a number of initiatives that union board members take on with the employer. Unions help with building power or helping give workers a voice in the workplace, collective bargaining, which could be used to negotiate equitable and fair wages, gender equality, immigration, access to quality education, such as trainings or continuing education credits, compliance with labor laws, along with workplace health and safety. In research conducted by Ted Bredmeyer, he points out that collective bargaining or collective voice increase productivity, reduce inequality, and represent the interest of their own workers as well as lower income and disadvantaged people. People in unions are less likely to quit, and in result, that internal knowledge and skill set is retained with the organization. A well-known lawsuit of Florence St. John versus General Motors addresses providing equitable pay for women and providing a healthy work environment. Florence worked in assembling harmonic balancers on General Motor vehicles, which was seen as a considerably physically demanding role. She, among other women in the organization, were disgruntled with unsanitary conditions of the women's lunchroom with birds roosting in the room from broken windows. But the main complaint was pay inequity based on gender. Women in heavy manufacturing roles were joining these unions, which were rapidly growing in members, resources, and recognition in the fight to improve wages and the working conditions. The AFL-CIO, or the American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organization, is a federation of 60 national and international labor unions that represent over 13 million working men and women. Its purpose and goal is to bring fairness and dignity to the workplace and secure social and economic equity. This includes several occupations such as skilled trade positions, postal workers, healthcare employees, athletes, students, etc. Within each of these unions, there are local unions that are present within communities. Specifically in Louisiana, there is a presence of local trade unions, which include the Iron Workers Local 623, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, or the IBEW 995, and the Central South Carpenters Regional Council, Local Union 1098. There is not a large presence of labor unions in Louisiana due to state laws making this a right-to-work state, which means that individuals must have the right to choose rather than being required to join a union. The unions that I've mentioned on this slide are skilled trade unions, but there are professional labor unions as well. For instance, in the state of New Jersey, there is a labor union designed for the interest of hospital employees, which is known as Health Professional and Allied Employees, or the HPAE. This is the largest labor union of registered nurses and healthcare professionals in the state of New Jersey. To put into perspective how strong of a presence this group has, there is currently 23 local unions at different facilities in the state, which represent around 12,000 nurses, social workers, therapists, technicians, medical researchers, and other positions as well. The mission and objective of this union is to improve overall patient care by advocating for safe staffing at the patient bedside, which impacts patient and worker safety. Also, these groups push for medical research funding and health care access for all people. According to Hogler's 2009 research, since the 1970s, labor union membership in the United States has declined from its peak of about 1/3 of the non-agricultural workers to just above 12% overall and 7.6% in the private sector. Another researcher named Adam Abrams discusses how there has been a significant drop in union membership in the private sector, which is the lowest level in history in his 2017 research with the Employee Relations Law Journal, a total of 6.4%, which means that more employees are choosing to reject joining a union even though the union is there to represent their interest. The drop appears to be related to a growing support of right-to-work movement. Right-to-work refers to statutes that are adopted for the express purpose of allowing employees the right to choose to join and pay dues to a union or choose to not be a member. National Labor Relations Act, or the NRLA, explicitly provides that unions can, in negotiations with an employer, put provisions in their collective bargaining agreement which requires that employees, as a condition of continued employment, become members of the union within 30 days of the effective date of the agreement. These arrangements ignore the rights of those that may have opposed the unionization from the beginning, which forces employees to pay into this. This could create hostility and opposition in the work environment. Peter Berg takes this another step further in his research and suggests that labor market inequality has declined since 2000. Berg indicates that wages have increased for men and women with very high-paying jobs, but wage stagnation has plagued the majority of workers for more than a decade. His research states that employers are deliberately misclassifying positions so that the employee can be paid less. In addition, overtime pay for extra hours worked was not paid. Misclassification of these positions can impact overall earnings as well as retirement earnings. Berg points out in his research that labor unions did play a major role in pay rates and benefit packages that have set the market trends. But the non-union employers often match these packages to reduce the likelihood of unions organizing. It can be assumed that businesses are doing this because labor union involvement adds extra layers of complexity to the environment, such as employees going on strike, demand servicing that may not be physically possible, or a less effective and more entitled workforce, among several other factors as well. Even though union presence and influence across the country is on the decline, the unionized members have better access to benefit package options and wages, which have direct impacts on a household's quality of life. But with decreasing numbers of unionized members, wage inequality for minority and disadvantaged groups to move up the economic ladder becomes more difficult for those impacted individuals. In DeVent's 2012 article titled "The Attack on U.S. Public Sector Unionism" states that the public sector unions in the United States have come under increasing attack since the onset of the financial crisis in the fall of 2008. With declines in tax revenue due to the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009 and with high level of unemployment exacerbated by the financial crisis, combined with the feeling that government spending is out of control, numerous media commentators as well as journal and newspaper articles have blamed public sector unions for their role in excessive government spending. Teacher unions are viewed by some as an obstacle to address public education reform, with the opposition to ideas such as linking teacher performance to students' academic achievement and opposition to creating charter schools. Attacking public employee unions has divided and weakened the working class by turning taxpayer, private sector employees against governmental employees who are now being seen or presented as privileged workers or members of a labor aristocracy. According to John Lee's research, employers and employees have changed expectations in the workplace. To improve quality of life issues, management and labor have increased communication and labor participation in such company policies as flex hours, length of vacation, quality circles, daycare, diversity, health benefits, etc. During a strike at the former Illinois Bell Telephone Company in Chicago, the lower level managers were not union members and would work extra hours, but silently cheer for the union to win its salary demands. The reason for this is because there would be a pay hike for lower and mid-level managers if the company would increase union member wages. This research does not go into detail on how upper-level management and administration felt about the union activity, but if they are not a part of a union, then it could be safe to assume that people in these higher roles do not like dealing with the union demands or strikes, as this has a negative impact on their bottom line for the year, since they're probably having to bring in contract or temporary workers to keep the organization operating until the strike is over. Although it appears there's more negative media and outlooks on labor unions, there are strengths that should be noted in recent events. In New Zealand, there is legislation against sexual or racial harassment in the workplace, which is something that we as United States workers are familiar with, since we have laws that also address these concerns. But research by Beck looks at legislation enacted prohibiting workplace bullying. His research defines workplace bullying as repeated, unreasonable, and inappropriate actions and practices that are directed to one or more workers, which are unwanted by the victim, which may be done deliberately or unconsciously, but do cause humiliation, offense, and distress, and that may interfere with job performance and cause an unpleasant working environment. New Zealand labor unions and WorkSafe New Zealand Council worked together to institute guidelines that define what would entail bullying. There are 3 elements that would prompt an investigation of an activity, which include repeated unreasonable behavior, actions directed toward a group or group of workers, or if it can lead to psychological or physical harm. Following Hurricane Sandy in 2012, there was a need for cleanup efforts in both New Jersey and New York. Latino immigrants played a vital role in this cleanup initiative. The laborers received federally funded short-term and occupational safety and health training through community-based organizations to reduce the health risk as well as hazards to themselves. This was an initiative that included university-based occupational health researchers, local labor unions, and 7 community-based organizations that serve Latino immigrant communities in both New York and New Jersey. A similar project was started from this framework following the August 2016 flood in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Again, local labor unions and community-based organizations provided occupational safety and health training for community cleanup projects. In conclusion to this presentation, collective bargaining or collective voice for union members can bring about positive changes for workers, such as increasing wages as well as sanitary and safe workplace environments. As mentioned in this presentation, 2017 was the lowest level in history of labor union involvement in the private sector. However, there are not signs of this in the public sector. There are times that there is not an option and people are forced to join unions unless you are working in a right-to-work state such as Louisiana, where state laws are set up to allow an individual to decide if he or she would like to join a union or not. There still appears to be issues with this based on Peter Berg's research, which indicates that employers are intentionally misclassifying jobs to pay workers at a lower rate. He also points out that business leaders are increasing wages and offering better benefits to avoid unionization process, as this will create extra layers of complexity for business leaders. With declining presence of unions presence, it is more difficult for minority or disadvantaged workers to move up the economic ladder. Business leaders are also seeing the value of increased communication with the labor force and involving them in policy decisions such as flex work schedules, holiday schedule, wages, etc. Recent positive events involving labor unions are WorkSafe New Zealand, establishing protection for employees against bullying in the workplace, community-based organizations and labor unions working together to create trainings for workers during community cleanup projects. With this information, there are strengths and downfalls to the modern-day labor union, with excessive spending being a major concern, but there are still advances being made in the workplace for its employees to have the opportunity to move up the economic ladder.